And now, on to something weird, right? The Enfield Haunting. Now, I want to get these stories on the map because it is the map of weirdness, right? The Enfield story, what I think is a great additive to the UK map of weirdness, right? And it all starts in Enfield. Of course it does, because it's the Enfield sighting, right? Right, North London, late summer 1977. A quiet street in Enfield, identical terraced houses, streetlights flickering in the night. Nothing about 284 Green Street suggested it will become the site of one of the most documented and debated hauntings in British history. Now, look, and if you are into ghosts and ghost stories, and I love the paranormal sites that I watch, every single one of you are brave, because I wouldn't be visiting places like that, right? So, but it is a welcome addition to the map, so I will start adding them. But if you have heard of this, apologies, but if you haven't, it's an interesting story, right? But inside that house, something was knocking, right? And it wasn't human. Tonight, we're diving deep into the Enfield Haunting. The voices, the levitations, the police reports, and the questions that still divide believers and skeptics nearly 50 years later. Was it a hoax? Or did something unseen truly invade that small family home? Now, so let's get into it, right? The first night, a Peggy Hodgson was a single mother raising 4 children, a Margaret, a Janet, a Johnny and Billy. Now, life was already hard and money was tight. The house was cramped and emotions ran high. Then came August the 30th, 1977. 11-year-old Janet complained that her chest of drawers were moving. Right, now, if you're a mother and your daughter Janet told you that the chest of drawers were moving, well, Peggy told her not to be silly. I mean, you would naturally do that. But then Peggy heard it too. 3 sharp knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And they were coming from the walls. Right, now Peggy checked the pipes. That's the first thing you would assume, wasn't it? It's human to be able to try and rationalise things. So she's heard 3 knocks in the wall, right, and assumed it was knocking pipes, because I'd have done the same, right? So the neighbours, the windows. So were they the pipes? Were they the neighbours? Were they the windows rattling in the wind? Nothing, right? The knocks followed her through the house, and then it answered questions. And this is the spooky one, right? It answered questions, right? Peggy would later say the knocker responded intelligently. 1 knock for yes, 2 for no. Right? Terrified, she called the neighbours. Terrified, I'd have packed the kids up and slept in the car, right? Vic Nottingham claimed he saw an armchair slide across the floor by itself. So the neighbours are freaking out, and that's when the police were called. Right, so the police turned up. Right, a female Metropolitan Police constable arrived, and she entered the living room. Okay, she later signed a statement saying that she saw a chair move approximately 4 foot across the floor on its own. No strings, no hands, no explanation. Right, this wasn't whispered folklore, it was written down. We have now got a police report, a Metropolitan WPC, saying that she saw a chair move on its own. No strings, no hands, no explanation. Soon, reporters from the Daily Mirror were on the scene. And they too claimed to witness marbles and Lego bricks flying through the air. I mean, that is hard to fake, isn't it? Now, what began as a frightened family complaint was now national news, all right? And the investigators got involved, right? That's when members of the Society for Physical Research arrived. 2 men would become central to the case. Morris Grouse, grieving the loss of his daughter and searching for answers, all right? And Guy Lynn Playfair, a journalist and a researcher who would later document the case in the book, this house is haunted, right? So Gross moved into the house for long stretches. He recorded over 180 hours of audio. He reckons he caught knocking, crashes, thuds, and then the voice. So this gets a lot creepier from this moment on, right? So, and it deserves a lower, more tense music. So it began as whispers, right? Then growls. Then a deep, raspy male voice coming from 11-year-old Janet, right? Now, the voice claimed to belong to Bill Wilkins, a man who had reportedly died in the house years earlier. And on tape, the voice said, right, see if I can get it creaky. No, I can't. Just before I died, I went blind. Then I had a hemorrhage and I fell asleep in the chair downstairs. Right, that's what the voice said. Now, investigators later confirmed that a former resident had indeed died in the home, and the voice sounded nothing like a child. So, doctors examined Janet. Yes, she could produce a sound, but sustaining the harsh, gravelly tone for extended periods should have severely damaged her vocal cords. That is according to the doctor, right? Yet this continued for weeks, sometimes for hours on end. Now, was it a ventriloquism? Was it? Was it psychological trauma? Or was it something speaking through her? Now, bear in mind, right, the doctor reckons that she could not have pulled that off unless she damaged her voice, right? So by late 1977, the activity intensified. Furniture flipped over, drawers flew open, and beds shook violently. Right, now that would be enough for me to go. I would never come back. But it gets even weirder, right? Because then came the photographs. Images appeared to show Jenna levitating above her bed, and I'll stick it there, arching mid-air. Look, frozen in black and white. Now, skeptics argue she was simply jumping. Believers insist the moment captured was genuine. So what do you think? Right, now, skeptics argue she was simply jumping. And in 1977, did they have the technology to capture a photo like that? I mean, we have now, right? But did they have that in 1977? I don't think they did. Right, as I say, believers insist the moment captured was genuine. And I am going to buy it, right? Journalists who stayed overnight described being struck by unseen objects. Right, curtains moved with no breeze. Water appeared mysteriously, and at one point, Janet was reportedly thrown from her bed. And the house became a media circus. Even priests visited, psychics arrived, crowds gathered outside. And inside the tiny living room, tape recorders never stopped running. Okay, so look, now, all right, if I'm wrong about the 1977 camera, and I could well be, because I'm not a camera specialist, right? Maybe if they did have that sort of technology where you could capture someone clearly jumping like that, doesn't explain everything else, right? It doesn't explain the fact that that WPC saw something, or that their neighbour saw something, right? Well, so obviously then came the doubt. Janet was caught bending spoons. On another occasion, she admitted to faking some small events. Of course, as you wish, the press seized on it, and skeptics declared the case closed. Yeah, I do. I get that, right? I get that. Why would she lie about it? She didn't need to. There was obviously a load of stuff going on. But Maurice Grouse insisted that occasional trickery didn't explain everything. He believed perhaps 2% of the incidents were fabricated. The other 98%, as I say, witnessed by police officers, journalists, researchers, right? They were genuine. Could an 11-year-old orchestrate a 2-year haunting under constant observation? This believer is going to say no. Or had the intention become too tempting to resist? right? So she, you know, she was there. She was the attention. Things were starting to quieten down. She thought, well, I'll keep this running. I'll bend the spoon. I'll pull a few things off to keep the cameras in here. That could be the reason, right? Because if my house was haunted, I would never want the people to leave, right? So by 1979, the disturbances faded. No dramatic exorcism, no final confrontation, just silence. The Hodgson family eventually moved on. Janet, now an adult, has consistently maintained it wasn't a hoax. Now the tapes still exist. The photographs still circulate. And the debate never truly ended. So, the question. Unlike many ghost stories, the Enfield case wasn't whispered in dark decades later, right? It unfolded live with police reports, press coverage, audio recordings, right? Okay, it later inspired the film like The Conjuring 2. But the real event remains far stranger than fiction. So what really happened inside 284 Green Street? Was it a troubled child seeking attention, right? I don't think it was. I think when she pulled off the face, she wanted the people to not leave, right? Mass hysteria amplified by the media, or a genuine poltergeist case caught on tape? What do you think? You know, drop me a line, tell me. I mean, if you lived there and heard 3 knocks in the middle of the night, would you open the door? Would you stay there? I certainly wouldn't. All right, well, look, this was UFO, aliens and weird stuff. Thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And it's very unusual for us, isn't it, to tell 2 stories, especially a spooky story at that, right? So, look. Tell me what you think. Do you think it's worth telling spooky stories? I do. They've got to go on the map. They've got to go there. So, I will catch you on the next one. Thanks very much.